Flames surrounded the rotting wooden house, and the crowd screamed for blood. Marcade held her twin children close, knowing tonight might be their last. But just before the fire consumed everything, a man stepped through the door. Alpha King Ronan Varric, the man she'd been running from for 5 years. His gaze fell upon the children's golden eyes, and Mara's world shattered in an instant. Could she survive in a palace full of enemies, or was an even crueler fate waiting? Watch until the end to find out. And don't forget to like and comment what city you're watching from. The smoke came first. Mara smelled it before she saw it, thick, acrid, curling under the gap beneath her door like something alive. Her hands froze over the bowl she'd been scrubbing, water dripping from her fingers onto the warped floorboards. "Mama?" The voice was small, scared. She turned. Kael stood in the doorway to the back room, his thin shoulders hunched, his golden eyes wide and unblinking in the dim light. Behind him, his sister Lena clutched the edge of his shirt, her face pale. Mara forced her voice steady. "Go to the cellar. Now." "But now, Kael." He hesitated, then grabbed Lena's hand and pulled her toward the trapdoor in the corner. Mara's heart hammered as she crossed to the window, peering through the cracked glass. Torches. Dozens of them, bobbing like fireflies in the darkness, moving up the hillside toward her cabin. She could hear them now, voices rising, a low chant that made her stomach twist. Witch, witch, witch. She'd known this day would come. She'd felt it creeping closer for weeks, ever since the blacksmith's daughter had seen Kael's eyes glow in the dark when he'd reached for a fallen coin. Ever since the whispers had started in the village square, the way people stopped talking when she walked past. 5 years. 5 years she'd kept them hidden, kept them safe. And now it was ending. Mara moved fast. She grabbed the iron poker from beside the hearth, tested its weight. Not much of a weapon, but it would have to do. She crossed to the cellar, knelt beside the trapdoor. "Kael, Lena, listen to me." 2 pairs of golden eyes stared up at her from the shadows below. "No matter what happens, you stay down here. You don't come out. You don't make a sound. Do you understand?" "Mama, no!" Lena's voice cracked. "Do you understand?" Kael's jaw tightened. He was only 5, but sometimes he looked at her like he was older, like he knew things he shouldn't. "Yes." Mara's throat closed. She wanted to climb down there with them, hold them, tell them it would be all right. But the torches were closer now, and she could hear boots on the path. She lowered the trap door, slid the rug over it, then she turned to face the door. The first blow came hard, wood splintering, hinges groaning. Mara raised the poker, her pulse roaring in her ears. The door burst open. They flooded in, 10, maybe 15 of them, faces twisted with fear and anger. She recognized some of them. The baker, the tanner's wife, the man who'd sold her firewood last winter. "There she is!" someone shouted. "Where are the children? Find them!" Mara stepped forward, blocking the path to the back room. "Get out of my house!" The baker, a thick-necked man named Oren, pushed to the front, a torch in one hand. "We know what you are. We know what they are." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Liar!" The tanner's wife spat at her feet. "We've seen those eyes. Golden eyes. Mark of the old blood. Mark of the cursed kings." Mara's grip tightened on the poker. "My children are not cursed. They're demons!" Oren's voice rose. "And you brought them here to poison our village. They're children. Then where's their father?" The tanner's wife sneered. "Who'd lie with a witch like you?" Mara said nothing. She couldn't, because the truth, the real truth, would get them all killed faster than any accusation of witchcraft. Oren stepped closer, and Mara saw the decision harden in his eyes. "We're taking them. The magistrate will decide what to do with them. Over my dead body. That can be arranged." He lunged. Mara swung the poker. It connected with his shoulder, a dull, meaty thud, and he staggered back with a roar. The crowd surged forward. She fought. God, she fought. The poker swung again, caught someone's arm, then their leg. Someone grabbed her hair, yanked her back. She drove her elbow into a soft stomach, heard a grunt of pain. But there were too many. Hands seized her arms, dragged her down. The poker clattered from her grip. She kicked, thrashed, screaming as they pinned her to the floor. "Find the children!" Oren bellowed, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "No!" Mara bucked against the hands holding her. "Leave them alone! Boots thundered through the cabin. She heard furniture being overturned, glass shattering. Someone ripped the curtain from the back room. "They're not here!" "Check the cellar." Mara's vision blurred with panic. She twisted, trying to break free, but the hands only tightened. Then she heard it, a scraping sound. The rug being pulled aside. "Here! The trap door!" "No!" Mara screamed. She threw her weight sideways, nearly broke free, but someone's fist cracked across her jaw and her head snapped back, stars exploding behind her eyes. The trapdoor creaked open. "Please," Mara gasped, tasting blood. "Please, they're just babies." "Mama!" Lena's voice, high and terrified. Mara's heart shattered. They dragged the children up, Kael fighting like a wildcat, Lena sobbing, and shoved them into the center of the room. The torchlight caught their faces, and their eyes flared gold. The crowd recoiled. "See?" Oren's voice shook. "See? Devil's eyes." "They're royal blood," someone whispered. "Impossible. The king has no heirs." "Then where did they come from?" All eyes turned to Mara. She said nothing. Her jaw throbbed, her vision swam, but she forced herself to meet their stares. Let them think what they wanted. Let them call her witch, whore, whatever they needed to make sense of it, as long as they didn't know the truth. Oren spat on the floor. "Doesn't matter where they came from. Royal blood or demon blood, it's all the same. Cursed. We burn them. We cleanse this village." "No." Mara's voice was raw. "You want someone to burn? Burn me. Let them go." "Mama, no!" Kael lunged forward, but rough hands shoved him back. Oren smiled, a cold, ugly thing. "Don't worry, witch. You'll burn too." They hauled her to her feet. Mara's legs buckled, but they dragged her forward anyway, out the door and into the cold night air. The twins were right behind her, Lena's sobs cutting through the roar of the crowd. The village square wasn't far. They'd already prepared, wood piled high in the center, 3 stakes driven into the ground. Mara's breath caught. 3. They weren't just burning her, they were burning all of them. "Tie them up," Oren ordered. Hands shoved her toward the center stake. Mara fought again, but her head was spinning, her body weak. Rough rope bit into her wrists, her ankles. She could hear Kael shouting, Lena screaming, and it took everything she had not to break apart completely. "It's all right," she called to them, her voice cracking. "It's all right. I'm here." "Shut her up," someone growled. A cloth was stuffed into her mouth, tied tight. Mara gagged, panic rising, but forced herself to breathe through her nose. The crowd gathered closer, torches lifted high. Oren stepped forward, his face grim. "By the law of the frontier, we cleanse this village of darkness. May their souls find mercy, if any remains." He lowered his torch toward the woodpile. Mara's eyes burned. She looked at her children, at Kael's tear-streaked face, at Lena's wide, terrified eyes, and something inside her broke and hardened at the same time. "I'm sorry," she thought. I tried so hard." The torch touched the wood. Flames leapt up, hungry and bright. And then the crowd went silent, all at once, like someone had cut every voice at the root. Mara's head jerked up. A figure stood at the edge of the square, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black and silver that caught the firelight and threw it back. His face was shadowed, but his eyes were ice. The crowd parted without a word, stumbling back like they'd been shoved. Even Oren stepped away, his torch lowering. The man walked forward, not fast, not slow, just steady, inevitable, like a storm rolling in. He stopped in front of the pyre, and for the first time in 5 years, Marcade looked into the face of Ronan Varric, the Alpha King. His gaze swept over the scene, the stakes, the flames starting to lick higher, the bound woman and the 2 small children. Then his eyes locked on Kael and Lena. Mara saw the exact moment he understood. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air, sharp and cold and absolute. "Who," Ronan said quietly, "gave the order to burn these children?" His voice was low, calm, and it made every person in that square go rigid with fear. Oren opened his mouth, closed it. "Tried again." "Your Majesty, we didn't know, see? Answer the question." It was a village decision. "They're cursed, Your Majesty. Golden eyes, old blood. We were protecting. Ronan's gaze slid to Oren, and the man actually stumbled backward. You were about to burn 2 children alive, and you call that protection? They're dangerous. Silence. The word cracked like a whip. Oren's mouth snapped shut. Ronan turned back to the stakes. He moved to Kyle first, cutting the ropes with a knife that appeared in his hand like magic. The boy collapsed forward, and Ronan caught him, steadied him. Then Lena, who clung to her brother the moment she was free. Then he came to Mara. Their eyes met. She couldn't read his face, couldn't tell if he was angry or shocked or something else entirely. But when he cut her ropes and pulled the gag from her mouth, his hands were steady. Can you stand? He asked. Mara's legs shook, but she nodded. He helped her down from the platform, his grip firm on her arm. The crowd watched in frozen silence. Ronan looked at them, really looked, his gaze sweeping over every face. These children are under my protection. Anyone who harms them, threatens them, or speaks against them will answer to me personally. Is that understood? Silence. I said, is that understood? A chorus of terrified yeses. Ronan's jaw tightened. Then he turned to Mara. Get the children. We're leaving. Mara's throat worked. Where? The capital. Her blood went cold. No, I can't. You don't have a choice. His voice dropped, meant only for her. Look around, Mara. You think they'll let you live after this? You're coming with me. All 3 of you. She wanted to argue, wanted to run, but Kyle and Lena were pressed against her legs now, trembling, and she could still smell the smoke from the flames. She looked at Ronan, at the man she'd fled from 5 years ago, the man whose bed she'd left in the middle of the night, and realized he was right. She had no choice. Not anymore. All right, she whispered. Ronan nodded once. Then he turned to the crowd. Bring horses. Now. 3 riders scrambled to obey. Within minutes, they were mounted. Mara with Lena in front of her, Kyle with Ronan. The king's guards materialized from the shadows, forming a protective circle. As they rode out of the village, Mara looked back once. The pyre still burned in the square, smoke rising black against the stars. She turned away. The edge of the world was behind them now. Ahead lay something far more dangerous. They rode through the night. Mara's arms ached from holding Lena, who'd finally fallen into an exhausted sleep against her chest. The rhythmic thud of hooves on dirt was the only sound, broken occasionally by the distant howl of a wolf or the rustle of wind through the trees. No one spoke. Mara kept her eyes on Ronan's back, on the way he held Kyle with one arm while guiding his horse with the other. The boy hadn't said a word since they'd left, but he wasn't crying anymore, just staring ahead, his small face set in a way that made Mara's chest hurt. He looked like his father. She pushed the thought away. Dawn was breaking, pale and cold, when they finally stopped. A river cut through the landscape here, wide and slow, with a stone bridge arching over it. Ronan dismounted first, then lifted Kyle down. We rest here, he said to the guards. 2 hours. They moved efficiently, setting up a perimeter, tending to the horses. Mara slid off her mount, her legs nearly buckling when her feet hit the ground. She caught herself against the saddle, breathing hard. Ronan appeared at her side. Give me Lena. Mara's arms tightened instinctively around her daughter. Mara? His voice was patient, but firm. You're about to fall over. Let me take her. She hesitated, then slowly transferred the sleeping child into his arms. Lena stirred but didn't wake, just curled into his chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. Ronan carried her to a flat spot near the river and laid her down on a bedroll one of the guards had prepared. Kale followed, settling beside his sister. Mara sank down next to them, every muscle screaming. Ronan crouched across from her, his expression unreadable. When did you plan to tell me? Her stomach dropped. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't. The word was sharp. I'm not blind, Mara, and I'm not stupid. She said nothing. His jaw worked. They're mine. It wasn't a question. Mara looked at her children, at the way Kyle's hand rested protectively on Lena's shoulder, even in sleep, and felt something crack inside her. Yes, she whispered. Ronan was silent for a long moment. Then he sat back on his heels, running a hand over his face. 5 years? Yes. You've been hiding them for 5 years. I didn't have a choice. His eyes snapped to hers. You had every choice. You could have told me. And then what? Her voice rose despite herself. You think I could just walk back into that palace with 2 bastard children and expect them to be safe? You think your court would have welcomed them? They're not bastards. They're my heirs. They're targets. Mara's hands shook. The moment anyone found out about them, they'd be dead. Or worse. So yes, I ran. I hid. I kept them alive. And I'd do it again. Ronan stared at her, something unreadable flickering across his face. Then he looked at the twins, and his expression softened, just barely. They have my eyes, he said quietly. Your father's eyes. The mark of the bloodline. He shook his head slowly. How did you keep them hidden this long? Carefully. Mara's throat tightened. We moved every year. Stayed in small villages, places where no one asked questions. I taught them to hide their eyes, to never let anyone see them glow. It worked. Until someone saw. She nodded. Ronan was quiet for a moment. Then, why did you leave? The question she'd been dreading. Mara looked away toward the river. You know why? No, I don't. You were in my bed one night and gone the next morning. No note, no explanation, just gone. I was a servant, Ronan, a nobody. You were the king. I didn't care. I cared, her voice cracked. I saw the way they looked at me, your advisors, your guards, like I was dirt, like I was something you'd use and throw away, and then I realized I was pregnant, and I knew they'd never let me keep them. You should have told me, he said again. Would it have changed anything? He opened his mouth, closed it. And that, Mara thought bitterly, was answer enough. She pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. So what happens now? Ronan's gaze was steady. Now you come back to the capital, all 3 of you. And then? And then I protect you. Mara laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You can't protect us from your own court. Watch me. The certainty in his voice made her look up. There was something in his eyes, something hard and unyielding that hadn't been there 5 years ago. He'd changed, grown colder, maybe, or maybe just stronger. Why? She asked. Why do this? You could just take them, leave me behind. Because they need their mother. He paused. And because I owe you that much. Mara's chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to push back, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a riptide. Get some sleep, Ronan said, standing. We leave in 2 hours. He walked away before she could respond. Mara looked down at her children, at their peaceful faces so fragile in the morning light, and felt the weight of 5 years crash over her all at once. She'd kept them safe, but safe was over now. The capital rose from the plains like a crown of stone and steel. Mara saw it first from the top of a hill, spires reaching toward the sky, walls thick enough to hold back an army. The city sprawled around the palace, a tangle of streets and rooftops that seemed to go on forever. Her stomach twisted. Big, isn't it? Kyle said quietly. She looked down at him. He was sitting in front of her now, his small body rigid with tension. It is, she admitted. Are there a lot of people? Yes. Will they try to hurt us again? Mara's hands tightened on the reins. No, I won't let them. Kyle didn't look convinced. Neither was she. They descended the hill and approached the city gates. Guards snapped to attention as Ronan rode through, their fists thumping against their chests in salute. People stopped in the streets to stare. At the king, at his entourage, at the ragged woman and 2 children riding behind him. Mara felt every eye on her, felt the weight of their curiosity, their judgment. She lifted her chin and stared straight ahead. The palace gates opened with a groan of metal. The courtyard beyond was massive, cobblestones polished to a shine, fountains bubbling, servants rushing to attend to the returning king. Ronan dismounted and handed his reins to a waiting groom. Then he came to Mara's side, reaching up to help Lena down first, then Kyle. Mara slid off the horse herself, ignoring the way her legs wobbled. A man in elaborate robes hurried forward, his face pinched with displeasure. Your Majesty, we were not expecting you back so soon. Plans changed. Ronan's voice was clipped. Prepare chambers in the east wing, 3 rooms adjoining. The man's gaze flickered to Mara and the children. Your Majesty, if I may ask, you may not. The man's mouth snapped shut. Ronan turned to Mara. Follow me. He led them inside, through corridors so wide and tall they made her dizzy, past tapestries and statues that probably cost more than her entire village. Servants pressed themselves against the walls as they passed, whispering behind their hands. The twins clung to Mara's skirts, their eyes huge. Finally, Ronan stopped in front of a set of ornate doors. He pushed them open. The room beyond was bigger than her entire cabin had been. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall draped in silk. Thick carpets covered the floor. Windows looked out over a garden that was so green it didn't seem real. This is yours, Ronan said. The children's rooms are on either side. Mara stepped inside slowly, like she might break something. This is too much. It's the bare minimum. He gestured to a side door. Bathing room is through there. Clothes will be brought up. Food too, if you're hungry. Kael and Lena had already darted toward the windows, pressing their noses to the glass. Ronan watched them for a moment, his expression softening. Then he looked at Mara. I'll send for you tonight. There are people you'll need to meet. Her stomach sank. Your court. Some of them. He paused. I won't lie to you, Mara. This won't be easy, but I meant what I said. I'll protect you. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Why does it matter to you? Ronan's gaze held hers. Because they're my children. And because... He stopped, shook his head. Because what? It doesn't matter. He stepped back toward the door. Rest. I'll send someone to check on you later. He left before she could ask anything else. Mara stood in the center of the too-big room, her children laughing at the window, and felt the walls closing in despite all the space. She'd escaped the fire, but she'd walked straight into a different kind of trap. And this time, there was no running away. Night came too quickly. A servant arrived to fetch her, a young woman with nervous eyes who barely looked at Mara as she led her through the winding halls. Kael and Lena stayed behind, watched over by another servant who seemed kind enough. Mara had bathed, dressed in the fine clothes they'd brought her, a deep green gown that felt like wearing water. Her hair was pinned up, her face clean for the first time in days. She looked like someone else in the mirror, someone who belonged here. It was a lie. The servant stopped in front of a set of double doors. The small council chamber, miss. His Majesty is waiting. Mara's heart hammered. She nodded, smoothed her skirts, and stepped inside. The room was dim, lit by candles that cast long shadows. A table dominated the center, and around it sat 5 people, 4 men and 1 woman, all dressed in the kind of expensive clothing that screamed power. Ronan stood at the head of the table. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered in his eyes. Mara, he said, come in. She moved forward, feeling every pair of eyes tracking her movement. Gentlemen, Lady Vaughn, Ronan continued, his voice formal, this is Mara Cade, and the 2 children she brought with her are my heirs. Silence. Then chaos. Impossible. Your Majesty, you can't be serious. Where did she come from? Quiet. Ronan's voice cut through the noise like a blade. They fell silent, but the tension in the room was suffocating. The woman, Lady Vaughn, apparently, leaned forward. She was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way, with pale hair and eyes like chips of ice. Your Majesty, forgive me, but this is sudden. If these children are truly your heirs, why have we never heard of them? Because I didn't know they existed, Ronan said flatly. And now you do. Lady Vaughn's gaze slid to Mara, assessing. How convenient. Mara's hands clenched. I didn't come here by choice. No? Lady Vaughn's smile was cold. Then why did you come? Because a mob tried to burn my children alive. Mara's voice shook, but she forced it steady. I came because the king decided I should, not because I wanted anything from him. How noble, Lady Vaughn's tone dripped sarcasm. And yet here you are, in the palace, with 2 children who supposedly carry royal blood. Forgive me if I'm skeptical. Enough. Ronan's voice was hard. Their blood is not in question. I know my own children when I see them. And we're to take your word for that? One of the men interjected, an older lord with a thick beard. Your Majesty, this woman could be anyone. Those children could be anyone's. Watch your next words very carefully, Ronan said softly. The man paled. Lady Vance stood, her movements graceful. Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect, but you must understand our concern. The kingdom has no official heirs, no line of succession. If anything were to happen to you, we'd be thrown into chaos. Which is exactly why I'm securing the succession now. With illegitimate children? Lady Vaughan's voice was gentle, almost sympathetic. Your Majesty, think about what you're asking. The court will never accept them. The noble houses will rebel, and this woman, she glanced at Mara. She has no name, no family, no standing. She cannot be the mother of future rulers. Mara's face burned. She wanted to speak, to defend herself. But what could she say? Lady Vaughan was right. She was nobody. Mara's standing is irrelevant, Ronan said. The children are mine. That's all that matters. Is it? Lady Vaughan moved closer to him, her voice dropping. Or is there something else at play here? Something you're not telling us? Ronan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Lady Vaughan smiled, a thin, knowing thing. I see. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Mara looked between them, confusion twisting in her gut. What wasn't she seeing? What was Lady Vaughan implying? This meeting is over, Ronan said abruptly. You've been informed. That's all you need to know. Your Majesty, I said over. They filed out slowly, casting glances back at Mara and Ronan. Lady Vaughan was the last to leave, her smile never wavering. When the door finally closed, Mara let out a breath she hadn't known she'd been holding. That went well, she said bitterly. Ronan's shoulders sagged slightly. I warned you it wouldn't be easy. You didn't warn me they'd look at me like I was dirt. They look at everyone like that. He moved to the window, staring out at the dark gardens. It's how they maintain power. And Lady Vaughan? Mara asked. She seemed particularly interested. Lyra Vance is the king's advisor. She's also the most dangerous person in this palace. More dangerous than you? Ronan's laugh was humorless. Much more. Mara crossed her arms, suddenly cold despite the warm room. What was she talking about? What aren't you telling me? Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then, there's something you need to know about why I've never taken a wife, about why I've kept my distance from attachments. Mara's heart sank. Ronan? I'm cursed, Mara. He turned to face her, and his eyes were bleak. Every king in my bloodline for the past 300 years has died young, and every single one of them died the same way, the moment they fell in love. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Mara stared at him. What? It's called the binding curse. Fall in love and the curse activates. You freeze from the inside out. It takes days, weeks, if you're strong, but it always kills. That's... She couldn't find the words. That's insane. That's my reality. Ronan's voice was flat. So yes, I've kept my distance. From everyone. Because I have to. Understanding crashed over her like a wave. That's why he'd let her go 5 years ago. Not because he didn't care. Because he did. Ronan, her voice cracked. Don't. He held up a hand. This doesn't change anything. The children need protection, and I'll give it to them. But that's all this is, protection. Is it? His eyes met hers, and for just a moment she saw something raw there, something that made her chest ache. Then it was gone. Get some rest, he said quietly. Tomorrow will be harder. He left before she could respond. Mara stood alone in the council chamber, her mind reeling. A curse. He was cursed, and she'd brought their children straight into the heart of it. What had she done? The breakfast table was a battlefield. Mara learned that the morning after her disastrous introduction to the council, she sat at the long table in what they called the family dining hall, though there was nothing familiar about it. The room was all marble and gold, with portraits of dead kings staring down at her like judges. Kael and Lena sat on either side of her, picking at their food. They'd barely slept, waking up twice from nightmares about the fire. Mara hadn't slept at all. Across from them sat Lady Lyra Vance, perfectly composed in a gown the color of winter frost. She sipped her tea and watched the children with the focus of a cat watching mice. "They're quite well behaved," Lyra said, her voice pleasant. "For children raised in, what was it, a frontier village?" Mara's fingers tightened on her fork. "They know how to behave." "Of course." Lyra's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Though I imagine palace life will be quite an adjustment. So many rules, so many expectations." "They'll manage." "Will they?" Lyra set down her cup. "Children can be so unpredictable. One wrong word in front of the wrong person, and—" She trailed off, letting the implication hang. Lena shrank closer to Mara. "Are you threatening my children?" Mara's voice was low, dangerous. "Threatening?" Lyra laughed, a light tinkling sound that made Mara's skin crawl. "My dear girl, I'm trying to help you. This court is not kind to outsiders, especially outsiders who make claims about royal blood." "I didn't make any claims. The king did." "Yes, and isn't that curious?" Lyra leaned forward slightly. 5 years of silence, and suddenly you appear with 2 golden-eyed children. One might wonder about the timing. The timing was a mob trying to murder us. "So you say." Mara's chair scraped back as she stood. "We're done here. Kael, Lena, come." The twins scrambled up, clearly relieved to leave. Lyra's voice followed them to the door. "Oh, Mara, a word of advice. In this palace, everyone is watching. Everyone is listening. Be very careful what secrets you keep." Mara didn't respond. She just took her children's hands and walked out, her heart hammering. In the corridor, Kael looked up at her. "Mama, I don't like that lady." "Neither do I, sweetheart." "Why does she hate us?" Mara knelt down, brushing hair from his face. "She doesn't hate you. She's just scared." "Of what?" "Of losing power, of change, of anything she can't control." "Of things she doesn't understand," Mara said instead. "But you don't need to worry about her. I won't let anything happen to you." Lena's small hand squeezed hers. "Promise?" Mara's throat closed. "Promise." It was a promise she had no idea how to keep. The palace was a maze. Corridors branched into more corridors. Staircases led to dead ends, and every room looked identical, all stone and tapestries and suffocating wealth. Mara got lost twice that first week. Once, she ended up in what seemed to be a servant's wing, earning startled looks from maids who whispered the moment she passed. The second time, she stumbled into a library so vast she couldn't see the end of it. That's where she met Davrin. He was young, maybe 20, with messy brown hair and ink stains on his fingers. He looked up from the book he was reading, startled. "Oh, sorry, I didn't know anyone else came here." Mara paused in the doorway. "I'm lost." "Ah." A grin spread across his face. "Everyone gets lost the first few weeks. I did. Ended up in the wine cellar 3 times before I figured out where my quarters were." Despite herself, Mara almost smiled. "Who are you?" "Davrin Hale, royal scribe, unofficial librarian, professional ink spiller." He stood, wiping his hands on his already stained tunic. "And you're the woman everyone's talking about." Mara's guard went up immediately. "What are they saying?" "Oh, the usual, wild speculation. Half the court thinks you're a spy. The other half thinks you seduced the king for power. A few people think you're actually a long-lost noble. It's very entertaining." "I'm glad my life is entertaining." Davrin's expression sobered. "I'm sorry, that was thoughtless. I just meant, well, ignore them. Most of the court wouldn't recognize truth if it bit them." Mara studied him. He seemed genuine, but she'd learned not to trust easily. "You said you're a scribe?" "For the king. I transcribe meetings, keep records, that sort of thing. Boring work, mostly, but it means I hear everything." He gestured to a chair. "Do you want to sit? You look exhausted." She shouldn't. She should find her way back to the children, make sure they were safe. But her feet hurt, and Davrin's open face was the first kind thing she'd seen in days. She sat. "So," Davrin said, settling back into his own chair. "How are you really doing?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" You just got dragged here against your will, thrown into a palace full of vipers, and told your children are heirs to a cursed throne. I imagine you're not doing great." Mara blinked. Then to her horror, she felt tears prickling her eyes. She pressed her palms to them, breathing hard. "Hey, it's okay. It's not okay." Her voice cracked. "Nothing about this is okay. I'm supposed to protect them, and I don't know how. I don't know the rules here. I don't know who to trust, and everyone looks at me like I'm something they scraped off their shoe." Davern was quiet for a moment. Then, "You trust the king?" "I don't know." "That's honest, at least." He leaned forward. "Look, I know I'm just some ink-stained scribe, but I've been here 5 years. I know how this place works. If you want help navigating it, I'm offering." "Why would you help me?" "Because you look like you need it, and because—" He hesitated. "Because I think the king needs you more than he's letting on." Mara's head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "I transcribe his meetings, remember? I see how he is with the council. Cold, distant, like he's carved from ice." Davern's voice dropped. "But when he talks about your children, he's different, more human." Mara's chest tightened. She thought about Ronan's face when he'd looked at Kael and Lena, the softness that had appeared for just a moment. "He told me about the curse," she said quietly. Davern's eyes widened. "He told you? He never tells anyone. It's why he stayed away, isn't it? 5 years ago." "Probably." Davern ran a hand through his hair. "The curse is the worst-kept secret in the palace. Everyone knows, but no one talks about it. Every king in the Vorik line dies young, usually around 30, and it always happens the same way. They fall in love, and the curse kills them. How does anyone know that's what triggers it? Because it's happened enough times. King falls in love, king starts freezing to death, king dies. It's a pattern." Davern's expression was grim. "Ronan's father died when Ronan was 16. His grandfather the same way, and his great-grandfather. It goes back 300 years. Why? Who cursed them?" "That's the question everyone asks. Some say it was a spurned lover. Others say it was a rival bloodline. There are even stories about—" He stopped abruptly. "About what?" Davern looked uncomfortable. "About your bloodline, actually." Mara went cold. "What?" "It's just a rumor. But some of the old texts mention a fire-blooded house that cursed the Vareks after a betrayal. A house that was wiped out centuries ago." He met her eyes. "A house whose descendants were said to have golden eyes." The room spun. "No," Mara whispered. "That's not possible." "Probably not," Davern agreed quickly. "Like I said, it's just a rumor. Old stories that don't mean anything." But Mara's mind was racing. Her mother had never talked about their family history, had never explained why they moved so often, why they hid, had never told Mara why she could sometimes feel heat building under her skin when she was angry. Fire-blooded. "I need to go," Mara said, standing abruptly. "Wait." But she was already walking out, her thoughts a tangle of fear and confusion. If the rumors were true, if her bloodline had cursed Ronan's, then what did that make her? What did that make her children? She found her way back to their chambers on instinct. Kael and Lena were in Lena's room playing with wooden toys a servant had brought. They looked up when she entered. "Mama?" Kael frowned. "You're pale." "I'm fine." She forced a smile. "Just tired." Lena climbed into her lap, and Mara held her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair. "It doesn't matter," she told herself. "Old bloodlines, old curses, none of it matters. All that matters is keeping them safe." But the fear didn't leave. That night, there was a feast. Mara didn't want to go, but Ronan sent word that her presence was required. So she dressed in another borrowed gown, this one deep blue, and made her way to the great hall. The noise hit her first, laughter and music and the clatter of dishes. The hall was massive, filled with long tables and hundreds of people in glittering clothes. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat the high table where Ronan presided. Lyra Vance sat to his right. Mara's stomach knotted. A servant guided her to a seat at one of the lower tables, far from the platform. The nobles around her looked her over with barely disguised curiosity and disdain. "So you're the mystery woman," the man next to her said. He was middle-aged with a sharp face and sharper eyes. "Lord Carrick, pleasure." "Maracade?" Yes, we've all heard. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Tell me, how does a village girl catch the king's eye? I didn't. No? Then how did your children end up with his blood? The conversations around them had gone quiet. Everyone was listening. Mara met his gaze steadily. That's between me and the king. Is it? Lord Carrick leaned closer. Because it seems to me like a rather convenient story. Poor girl, royal bastards, shows up just in time to secure a position at court. I didn't want to be here. Then leave. I can't. The words escaped before she could stop them. Lord Carrick's smile widened. Can't or won't? There's a difference, you know. Mara's hands clenched under the table. She wanted to throw her wine in his face, wanted to tell him exactly what she thought of his games. But she couldn't, because he was right. She was trapped here. One wrong move and they'd use it against her, against Kyle and Lena. So she said nothing. The meal dragged on, course after course of rich food that turned to ash in her mouth. Around her, nobles talked and laughed and ignored her except to throw veiled insults. By the time dessert arrived, Mara wanted to scream. Then Ronan stood. The hall fell silent immediately. My lords, my ladies, he said, his voice carrying across the space. I have an announcement. Mara's pulse quickened. As you all know by now, I have two heirs, Kyle and Lena Varick. They are my children, born of my blood, and they will be recognized as such. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Furthermore, Ronan continued, their mother, Mara Cade, will be granted the title of lady and given chambers in the royal wing. She and the children are under my direct protection. Any insult to them is an insult to me. The murmurs grew louder. Lyra Vance stood smoothly, her expression concerned. Your Majesty, forgive me, but this is highly irregular. To grant a title without consulting the council. I don't need to consult the council on matters of my own household. But the implications are mine to deal with. Ronan's gaze swept the hall. This is not a debate. It's a fact. Mara Cade is Lady Cade as of this moment. Anyone who has a problem with that can bring it to me personally. His tone made it clear that would be a bad idea. Lyra sat back down, her jaw tight. Ronan's eyes found Mara's across the crowd. She couldn't read his expression, couldn't tell if this was genuine protection or just a political move. Then he raised his cup. To the future. The hall echoed the toast, but the voices were forced. Strained, Mara didn't drink. After the feast, she tried to slip back to her chambers unnoticed, but Lyra Vance intercepted her in the corridor. A word, Lady Cade. Mara stopped. I'm tired. This won't take long. Lyra's smile was pleasant, poisonous. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. They walked in silence through empty hallways until they reached a balcony overlooking the gardens. The moon was full, casting silver light over everything. You handled Lord Carrick well tonight, Lyra said. Most women would have crumbled. I'm not most women. Clearly. Lyra turned to face her. But you're also not stupid. You know this title means nothing, don't you? I didn't ask for it. No, but you have it now, and that makes you a target. Lyra's voice was almost kind. The nobles won't accept you. They'll fight you at every turn. And when they do, Ronan won't always be there to protect you. Then I'll protect myself. Will you? Lyra's eyes glittered in the moonlight. You don't know the first thing about court politics, about power, about how to survive in a place like this. I survived 5 years on the frontier with 2 children. I think I can handle a few nobles. Lyra laughed. The frontier is nothing compared to this. Out there, enemies come at you with torches and knives. Here, they come with smiles and compliments. And by the time you realize they've struck, it's too late. Mara's skin prickled. What do you want? I want to offer you an alliance. An alliance? Yes. Lyra moved closer. You're in over your head, Mara. You need someone who knows how this place works. Someone who can teach you the rules, guide you. And what do you get out of it? Information, influence, the king's ear. Lyra shrugged. Small things. Nothing about you is small. How perceptive. Lyra's smile sharpened. So what do you say? Do we help each other, or do I leave you to drown? Mara stared at her. Every instinct screamed not to trust this woman, But Selra was right about one thing. She was drowning. She didn't know the rules, didn't know the players, but she also knew a trap when she saw one. No, Mara said. Selra's smile didn't waver. No. I don't need your help, and I definitely don't trust you. That's a mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make. For a moment, something cold flashed in Selra's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by that pleasant smile. Very well. But when you change your mind, and you will, don't expect me to offer again. She glided away, leaving Mara alone on the balcony. Mara gripped the railing, her hands shaking. She'd just made an enemy, a powerful one. But what choice did she have? Mad. The next morning, Mara woke to screaming. She bolted upright, her heart in her throat. The screams were coming from Lena's room. Mara ran, her bare feet slapping against cold stone. She burst through the door and found Lena on the floor, surrounded by shattered glass and spilled water. Her hands were pressed to her face, and she was sobbing. Lena! Mara dropped beside her, pulling her hands away. What happened? Are you hurt? I didn't mean to, Lena wailed. I didn't mean to. Mean to what? Kael appeared in the doorway, his face white. Mama, the pitcher. It exploded. Mara looked. The water pitcher lay in pieces on the floor. But it wasn't just broken. The glass looked melted, twisted, like it had been exposed to intense heat. Mara's blood went cold. Lena, she said carefully. Did you touch the pitcher? I was thirsty, Lena sobbed. I just wanted water, and then it got hot, and then it broke, and... It's okay. It's okay. You're not in trouble. Mara held her daughter tight, her mind racing. The heat, the melted glass, fire-blooded. Kael, go get a servant. Tell them there was an accident. Don't give details. He hesitated, then nodded and ran. Mara looked at Lena's hands. They were red, but not burned, not even blistered. Lena, does it hurt? A little, but it's fading. Of course it was. Because Lena hadn't been hurt by the heat. She'd caused it. Mara's daughter had her power. She thought fast. The servants would be here any moment. If they saw the melted glass, if they put it together with Lena's golden eyes. She grabbed a blanket and swept the glass into it, bundling it up. Then she grabbed a decorative vase from the side table and smashed it on the floor, scattering pieces. Kael returned with a young maid who took in the scene with wide eyes. I'm so sorry, Mara said quickly. I knocked the vase over getting water. Completely my fault. The maid bobbed a curtsy. No trouble, my lady. I'll clean it right up. Thank you. Mara took Lena's hand and led her back to her own chambers, Kael following close behind. Once the door was shut, she sat them both down. Lena, has this happened before? Things getting hot when you touch them? Lena nodded miserably. Sometimes, when I'm scared or angry. Why didn't you tell me? I thought I was bad. Her voice was tiny. Like they said in the village. Cursed. Mara's heart broke. You're not cursed, sweetheart. You're just different, special. What about me? Kael asked quietly. I can feel things sometimes, like cold in my chest. When I'm angry, things around me get cold. Mara closed her eyes, both of them. They'd both inherited something, from her, from Ronan, some twisted combination of bloodlines that shouldn't mix. Listen to me, both of you. This is very important. She made sure they were looking at her. You cannot let anyone see what you can do. No one. Not the servants, not the nobles, and especially not Lady Vaughn. Do you understand? But why? Lena asked. The king has powers too, doesn't he? That's what the servants say. It's different for him. He's the king. But you two... Mara struggled to explain. People are already scared of you because of your eyes. If they knew you could do this, they'd be terrified. And terrified people do dangerous things. Like try to burn us, Kael said flatly. Yes. He nodded slowly. Okay, we'll hide it. Good. Mara pulled them both close. We just need to stay quiet, keep our heads down, and eventually they'll get used to us. But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Mara learned to navigate the palace, learned which corridors to avoid and which servants were safe to talk to. She learned that mornings were better than evenings, that the library was a sanctuary, and that Davrin was one of the few genuine people in the whole cursed place. She also learned that Lyra Vance was everywhere. At breakfast, in the gardens, lurking in corridors, always watching, always smiling that cold smile. And Ronan was nowhere. He'd buried himself in council meetings, military matters, trade negotiations. Mara barely saw him except at the occasional formal dinner. And even then, he barely looked at her. It was like he was avoiding her, or avoiding what she represented. One afternoon, she couldn't take it anymore. She marched to his study and pushed past the guards before they could stop her. Ronan looked up from a stack of papers, startled. Mara, we need to talk. I'm in the middle of, I don't care. She shut the door behind her. You dragged me here. You gave me a title I didn't want. You told the entire court those children are yours. And then you disappeared. Ronan's jaw tightened. I've been busy. You've been avoiding us. That's not... Don't lie to me. Mara's voice shook with fury. You know what's happening out there? Your nobles are circling like wolves. Lyra Vance tried to recruit me. Someone left a dead rat in Lena's bed last week. And Kyle won't leave our chambers anymore because the other children in the palace throw rocks at him. Ronan's expression went cold. What? You didn't know? Of course you didn't, because you're too busy hiding in here. I'm not hiding. Then what do you call this? She gestured around the study. You made promises, Ronan. You said you'd protect us, but you can't protect us from across the palace. Ronan stood, his hands braced on the desk. You think I don't know what they're doing? You think I don't hear the reports? Then do something. I am doing something. I'm trying to hold this kingdom together while half my council plots against me and the other half thinks I've lost my mind. And what about your children? The words hung in the air between them. Ronan's face went blank. They're safe. Safe? They're terrified. They're isolated. They're alive. His voice was harsh. Which is more than they'd be if I hadn't pulled them out of that village. So yes, this isn't perfect. Yes, it's hard. But they're alive, Mara, and that's what matters. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, we just traded one mob for another. At least in the village, I knew who wanted us dead. Ronan flinched. Mara took a breath, trying to steady herself. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I'm just asking you to be there, to let them know they have a father. I can't. Why not? Because... He stopped, his hands clenching. Because the more I'm around them, the more I... He didn't finish. But Mara understood. The more I love them, the more dangerous it becomes. The curse. Always the curse. Ronan, she said softly, you can't live like this. Keeping everyone at arm's length. Never letting yourself feel anything. I can. I have to. No, you don't. There has to be a way to break it. There isn't. His voice was flat. Hundreds of scholars have tried. Hundreds of years. There's no breaking it. How do you know if you won't even try? Because trying means hoping, and hope gets people killed. He met her eyes. I won't do that to them. I won't let them get attached to me just to watch me die. So you'll just let them think you don't care? If that keeps them safe? Yes. Mara stared at him, something breaking inside her chest. You're a coward. Ronan's face went white. You're a coward, she said again. You're so scared of the curse that you're giving up before the fight even starts. And you're using it as an excuse to avoid the only thing that makes you human. Get out! No. Mara, those children need you. I don't care about the curse. I don't care about the politics. They need their father. I said, get out. His voice cracked like ice breaking. Mara held his gaze for one more moment. Then she turned and left, slamming the door behind her. In the corridor, she pressed her back against the wall, her whole body shaking. She'd pushed too hard, said too much. But she wasn't sorry. Someone had to make him see what he was throwing away. That night, Lena had another nightmare. Mara held her as she cried, rocking her gently. Shh, it's all right. You're safe. I dreamed about the fire again, Lena whispered. They were coming for us and you weren't there. And I'm here now. I'm always here. Kale appeared in the doorway, his eyes shadowed. Can I sleep in here too? Of course. They curled up together in Mara's bed, a tangle of limbs and warmth. Mara stroked their hair until they finally drifted off. But she stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. Something had to change. She couldn't keep living like this, jumping at shadows, waiting for the next attack, watching her children fade a little more each day. Davern had mentioned old texts, stories about the curse's origin. If the curse had been created, then maybe it could be destroyed. It was a long shot. Probably impossible. But Mara had survived impossible odds before. She'd do it again. For them, she'd do anything, even if it meant uncovering secrets that could destroy them all. The library became Mara's refuge over the next week. While Kael and Lena attended their lessons with a nervous tutor, she disappeared into the stacks, searching for anything about the curse. Davern helped when he could, pulling dusty volumes from forgotten corners, translating passages from languages Mara couldn't read. Most of it was useless, speculation, folklore, stories that contradicted each other. But on the 7th day, she found something. It was tucked inside a leather-bound journal, the pages brittle with age. The handwriting was cramped, frantic, and it told a story Mara had heard whispers of but never believed. 300 years ago, there were two great houses. House Varric, strong and cold as winter. House Solane, fierce and bright as flame. They ruled together, balanced each other, kept the kingdom whole. Until Aldrich Varric fell in love with Alara Solane. Their union should have strengthened both houses. Instead, it destroyed them. Aldrich's father forbade the marriage, called Alara's bloodline corrupt, dangerous. He forced his son to wed another, a political match that meant nothing. Alara, heartbroken and furious, confronted Aldrich on his wedding night. And when he turned her away, when he chose duty over love, she cursed him. "You and yours will never know love without death," she swore. "Every king who dares to feel will freeze from within. And my bloodline, the bloodline you rejected, will be the only key to breaking it." She burned herself alive that night. Her family tried to stop her, tried to save her, but the flames consumed everything. The entire Solane line was wiped out in the fire, or so they thought. Mara's hands trembled as she read the last line. But fire cannot kill fire. And some say Alara's youngest sister escaped, carrying the Solane power in her veins. "That's impossible," Mara whispered, but her hands were warm. Too warm, like something beneath her skin was waking up. "Find something interesting?" She jumped, slamming the journal shut. Davern stood behind her, 2 more books in his arms. "Just family histories." "Anything useful?" Mara hesitated. Could she trust him? Really trust him? She thought of his ink-stained fingers, his easy kindness, the way he'd helped her without asking for anything in return. "Davern, what do you know about House Solane?" His face went carefully blank. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think," she took a breath, "I think I might be descended from them." Silence. Then Davern set down the books and pulled out a chair, sitting across from her. "Tell me everything." So she did. The journal, story, her mother's secrecy, the way they'd always moved, always hidden, the heat she sometimes felt building under her skin. And Lena, what Lena could do with her hands. When she finished, Davern was quiet for a long moment. "If this is true," he said slowly, "if you really are Solane blood, Mara, do you understand what that means? That I'm descended from the woman who cursed Ronan's family. That you might be the only person alive who can break the curse." The words hung in the air between them. "How?" Mara asked. The journal didn't say how. Because no one knows. The Solanes kept their magic secret. Fireblood, they called it. The ability to burn without being consumed. Davern leaned forward. "But there are rumors. Old stories about how Solane magic could undo Varric ice. How fire could thaw what cold had frozen. That's not exactly specific. No, but it's a start." He pulled one of the books closer. "I've been researching too. There are patterns in how the curse works. It's not instant. It builds slowly, over weeks or months. The more the king loves, the stronger the curse becomes." "So if Ronan never loves anyone, he's safe." "Exactly. But if he does," Davern's voice dropped. "The curse manifests as ice growing from within. It starts in the chest, near the heart, spreads slowly through the blood. Eventually, it reaches the brain, and he dies. He dies. Mara's chest tightened. Has it started? In Ronan? I don't know. He doesn't let anyone close enough to check. But if he's been holding back for years, avoiding attachments... Davern met her eyes. What do you think happens now that he has children he actually cares about? The implication hit her like a fist. He's dying, Mara breathed. That's why he's avoiding us. That's why he's keeping his distance. Maybe. Or maybe he's just terrified it will start. Either way, he's already half gone. Anger flared in Mara's chest. He's giving up without even trying to fight. Can you blame him? Every king before him died. Why would he be different? Because I'm here. The words came out fierce. Because I might actually be able to save him. Davern's expression was worried. Mara, even if you are Solane blood, we don't know how to use it. We don't know if it will even work. And if you try and fail, then at least I tried. She stood, the journal clutched in her hands. I'm not going to sit here and watch him die out of fear. Wait, where are you going? To talk to someone who might know more than old books. Who? Mara's jaw set. Lyra Vance. Davern grabbed her arm. Are you insane? She'll use anything you tell her against you. I know, but she's been at this court longer than anyone. She knows the history, the secrets, and she's smart enough to see an opportunity when it's in front of her. An opportunity to do what? To be on the winning side when the curse finally breaks. Davern looked at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. But she was done being careful, done hiding. If she was going to save Ronan, save her children's father, she needed answers. And Lyra Vance had them. She found Lyra in the East Gardens, taking tea with two other noble ladies. They looked up as Mara approached, their expressions ranging from surprise to disdain. Lady Cade, Lyra said smoothly, what a pleasant surprise. I need to speak with you. Alone. The other ladies exchanged glances. Now? Lyra's eyebrow arched. I'm rather busy. Now. Something flickered in Lyra's eyes. Interest, maybe, or calculation. She set down her cup. Ladies? If you'll excuse me. They left with barely concealed curiosity. Lyra gestured to the empty chair. Sit. I'd rather stand. Suit yourself. Lyra poured herself more tea. So, what brings you to me after you so firmly rejected my offer? Information. How delightfully vague. Mara pulled the journal from her cloak and set it on the table. I want to know everything you know about House Solane. Lyra went very still. Her eyes dropped to the journal, then back to Mara's face. Where did you get that? The library. That section is supposed to be restricted. Apparently not restricted enough. Mara leaned forward. I know about the curse's origin. I know about Alara Solane. And I know you've spent years studying it. Lyra's expression was unreadable. And what makes you think that? Because you're too smart not to. You're the king's closest advisor. You've watched him avoid love his entire life. You know the curse will kill him eventually. And you've been preparing for it. Preparing for what exactly? For the transfer of power. For the chaos that comes when a king dies without a clear heir. Mara straightened. But now he has heirs. My children. And that changes everything. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, sharp and cold. Clever girl. You're right, of course. I've been preparing. Because unlike the king, I don't have the luxury of denial. Then help me break the curse. Why would I do that? Because if Ronan dies, this kingdom tears itself apart. The noble houses will fight over the throne. My children will be targets. And you. You'll lose everything you've built. Perhaps. Or perhaps I'll come out on top. I usually do. Not if the kingdom burns. Mara's voice hardened. I'm offering you a chance to be part of the solution instead of scrambling through the aftermath. Lyra studied her, those ice-chip eyes revealing nothing. Then she stood, picking up the journal. Walk with me. They left the gardens and entered a part of the palace Mara hadn't seen before. Older, quieter, with stone walls that felt like they held secrets. Lyra led her to a door hidden behind a tapestry and unlocked it with a key from her pocket. Inside was a study, but not like Ronan's. This one was filled with papers, scrolls, diagrams covering every surface, maps of bloodlines, charts of curse progressions, Notes in cramped handwriting. I've been researching for 15 years, Selra said quietly. Ever since I watched Ronan's father die. Ever since I realized the pattern. Mara's breath caught. You knew his father? I was there when he died, 16 years old, newly appointed to the council because my own father had just passed. Selra's voice was distant. King Theron was a good man, strong, fair, and he fell in love with a merchant's daughter, a woman who loved him back. What happened? The curse took him, slowly at first, then faster. By the end, his skin was blue. His breath came out as frost. He couldn't even hold his son's hand without causing him pain. Selra set the journal on a table. Ronan was 16, old enough to understand, young enough that it broke something in him. Mara's throat closed. After that, I swore I'd find a way to break it, but every path led nowhere. Every theory fell apart. Selra looked at her. Until now. What changed? You. Selra pulled out a scroll covered in family trees. I've traced the Selene line as far as I could. It was thought to be extinct, but if you're telling me you have fire in your blood, if your daughter can heat metal with her hands, she met Mara's eyes. Then the line survived. And that means I can break the curse? Maybe. The theory is sound. Selene fire could counter Varric ice. But theory and practice are very different things. How do I make it work? Selra hesitated. I don't know. The Solenes kept their magic secret, but there's one person who might. Who? The Ember Witch. Mara blinked. The what? An old woman who lives in the Ashwood Forest, 3 days' ride from here. She's said to be the last keeper of fire-blood knowledge. Most people think she's a myth, but I found too many references to ignore. Selra pulled out a map. If she exists, she might know how to use your power. Then I'll go. Alone? Through hostile territory? If I have to. Selra's laugh was sharp. You really are either very brave or very stupid. She folded the map and held it out. Take this. And this. She handed Mara a small pouch. Silver for the road. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not Davrin, not the king, especially not the king. Why are you helping me? Because you're right. If Ronan dies, everything collapses. And I've spent too many years building my position to watch it crumble. Selra's expression was hard. But make no mistake, this isn't friendship. This is strategy. You break the curse, you save the kingdom, and I maintain my power. We both get what we want. And if I fail, then we were both fools. Mara took the map and the silver. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The Ashwood is dangerous, filled with bandits and worse. And the Ember Witch, if she exists, isn't known for her hospitality. I'll manage. I hope so. Selra walked to the door, opening it. One more thing. If you do find her, if you do learn how to break the curse, be very careful. Magic like that always has a price. The warning hung in the air as Mara left. She told the children she was going to visit a distant market, told them she'd be back in a week. Cale didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes, but he didn't argue. Be safe, Mama, was all he said. Lena clung to her. I don't want you to go. I have to, but I promise I'll come back. Another promise she wasn't sure she could keep. She left at dawn, dressed in traveling clothes, with a horse Selra had arranged and a knife at her belt. The guards at the gate barely looked at her, just another minor noble leaving for personal business. The Ashwood Forest was 3 days northeast. Mara rode hard, stopping only to rest the horse and grab a few hours of sleep. The landscape changed as she traveled, from open plains to rolling hills to thick forest that blocked out the sun. On the second night, she heard wolves howling in the distance. On the third day, she reached the forest's edge. It was darker than any forest she'd seen. The trees were massive, their trunks blackened like they'd survived a fire. Ash covered the ground in a fine gray powder that muffled her horse's hooves. The map Selra had given her showed a path, but it was barely visible. Mara dismounted and led the horse forward, every sense on high alert. Something felt wrong here. Not dangerous, exactly, but old. Like the forest remembered things it shouldn't. She walked for hours. The light faded even though it was only afternoon. and then she saw it. A cottage, small and crooked, sitting in a clearing of dead grass. Smoke rose from the chimney. Mara tied her horse to a tree and approached slowly. The door was ajar. "Hello?" she called. No answer. She pushed the door open. Inside, the cottage was cramped and cluttered. Herbs hung from the ceiling. Books were stacked in precarious piles. And in the center, tending a fire that burned without wood, was an old woman. She didn't look up. "Took you long enough." Mara froze. "You were expecting me?" "Fire knows fire, girl. I felt you coming days ago." The woman straightened, and Mara got her first good look. She was ancient, skin like paper, hair white as snow, but her eyes were bright and golden, Solane eyes. "You're the Ember Witch," Mara breathed. "That's what they call me." The woman gestured to a chair. "Sit. We have much to discuss." Mara sat, her heart hammering. The witch poured 2 cups of something that smelled like smoke and honey. "You want to break the Varric curse." "How did you—" "I told you. Fire knows fire, and I know why you're here." She handed Mara a cup. "The question is, are you willing to pay the price?" "What price?" The witch smiled, sad and knowing. "Breaking a curse isn't free, child, especially one as old as this. Elara Solane bound her life to that curse when she spoke it. Her pain, her rage, her love. All of it twisted together. So how do I break it? With the same thing it was made from. Pain, rage, love." The witch's eyes bored into Mara's. "You'll need to burn, girl. Really burn. Not just your magic, but everything you are. Everything you feel. And when you do, when you pour all of that into the king, the curse will break. And then what happens to me?" The witch's silence was answer enough. "I'll die," Mara whispered. "Maybe, maybe not. Fire doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it transforms." The witch sipped her drink. "But there's no guarantee. You could save him and lose yourself. You could burn so bright you consume everything. Or you could fail and both of you die." Mara's hand shook around the cup. "There's no other way." "None that I know. The curse is in his blood now. The only way to burn it out is with fire that burns just as deep. What if I'm not strong enough?" "Then you're not." The witch shrugged. "But you didn't come all this way to give up. So I'll teach you what I can. How to control the fire. How to let it burn without destroying everything in its path. The rest is up to you." Mara looked into the cup, at the steam rising like ghosts. She thought of Kale and Lena, of their frightened faces. She thought of Ronan, cold and distant, dying by inches. She thought of the choice she'd already made the moment she started searching. "Teach me," she said. The witch smiled. "Good. We start now." The training was brutal. For 5 days, the witch pushed Mara past every limit she thought she had. She learned to call the fire from her blood, to let it pool in her hands without burning her skin. She learned to shape it, control it, make it do what she wanted instead of what it craved. And she learned that fire had a mind of its own, a hunger. "It wants to consume," the witch said on the 3rd day, watching Mara struggle to keep a flame from spreading. "That's its nature. Your job is to teach it another way." "How?" "By showing it love can be stronger than rage." Mara almost laughed. "I don't know how to do that." "Yes, you do. You've been doing it for 5 years. Every time you held your children, every time you protected them instead of running. That's love, girl. That's the strongest fire there is." On the 5th day, Mara could hold fire in both hands without flinching, could pour it into a cup of water and make it boil, could wrap it around herself like a cloak. "You're ready," the witch said. "Am I?" "No, but you'll never be truly ready?" "That's not how this works." The witch pressed something into Mara's hand, a small vial filled with dark liquid. "When the time comes, when you see the ice taking him, drink this first. It will amplify your power, give you enough strength to burn the curse out." "What is it?" "Solane blood, the last of it. Passed down through my line for 300 years. The witch's voice was soft. "Use it well. And remember, fire is transformation. It doesn't have to be death." Mara closed her fingers around the vial. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just survive." She rode back faster than she'd come, urgency driving her forward. Something felt wrong, like a storm was building just out of sight. She reached the palace on the 7th night, exhausted and filthy. The guards let her through without question. The halls were quiet. Too quiet. Mara ran to her chambers, her heart in her throat. Empty. Kael and Lena's rooms, empty. Panic clawed at her chest. She ran through the corridors, searching, calling their names. Then she heard shouting, angry voices coming from the throne room. She burst through the doors and stopped dead. The throne room was packed. Nobles, guards, servants, all of them watching the scene at the center. Ronan stood before his throne, his face pale. Beside him, Lyra Vance held a thick document. And in front of them, surrounded by guards, were Kael and Lena. "Mama!" Lena's voice cracked. "What's happening?" Mara demanded, pushing through the crowd. "What are you doing to them?" Lyra looked up, her expression unreadable. "Ah, Lady Cade, how convenient. We were just discussing your children's unique abilities." Mara's blood went cold. "What?" "It seems your daughter had an accident during her lessons. Set fire to her tutor's desk. The flames burned blue. Very unusual." Lyra's voice was calm, measured. "Naturally, we had to investigate." "It was an accident, was it?" Lyra unrolled the document. "Because according to this, House Solane, the house that cursed the Virex, was known for one thing above all: blue fire." The crowd gasped. Mara's world tilted. "You're Solane blood," Lyra continued. "Aren't you? That's why you ran. That's why you hid. Because you knew if anyone discovered the truth, they'd see you for what you are." "And what's that?" Mara's voice shook. Lyra's eyes were ice. "A threat to the throne, a descendant of the woman who cursed our kings, and the mother of 2 children who carry that same cursed power." "No." Ronan stepped forward. "This is insane." "Is it?" Lyra turned to him. "Your Majesty, look at the evidence. She appears after 5 years with children she claims are yours, children with golden eyes and unnatural powers, children who just happen to carry the blood of your family's greatest enemy." "They're not a threat," Mara said desperately. "They're just children. They're weapons." Lyra's voice hardened. "And you brought them into the heart of this kingdom. For all we know, you planned this from the beginning, to destroy us from within." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. "That's not true." Mara looked at Ronan. "You know that's not true." But Ronan's face was blank, closed off. "Your Majesty," Lyra said softly, "for the safety of the kingdom, I recommend we place Lady Cade and her children under arrest, until we can determine the extent of the threat." "No," Ronan said. "Your Majesty," I said no. His voice was hard. "Mara and the children stay free." "That's an order." Lyra's jaw tightened. Then she bowed. "As you wish." But the way she looked at Mara sent ice down her spine. This wasn't over. The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly. Mara grabbed Kael and Lena, pulling them close. "It's all right," she whispered. "Everything's all right." But Kael looked up at her with knowing eyes. "She's going to hurt us, isn't she?" Mara had no answer. Because he was right. Because he was right. Mara didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window in her chambers, watching the courtyard below, the vial of Solane blood clutched in her hand. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every sound made her jump. Kael and Lena slept fitfully in her bed, tangled together like they used to when they were smaller, before the world got complicated, before everything went wrong. The door opened without a knock. Mara spun, fire already pooling in her palms before she saw who it was. Ronan. He looked terrible. His skin was too pale, almost translucent in the moonlight. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and when he moved, there was a stiffness to his movements that hadn't been there before. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Not here." Mara glanced at the sleeping twins. "They've been through enough." They walked to an empty sitting room down the hall. Ronan closed the door and leaned against it like standing was taking all his strength. "Are you all right?" Mara asked. "No." His laugh was hollow. "But that's not new." "Ronan, is it true?" He cut her off. "Are you really Solane blood?" Mara's hands clenched. "Yes." He was quiet for a long moment. "How long have you known?" "I suspected for a while. I confirmed it a week ago." That's where you went, when you left. Not a question. I needed answers about the curse, about how to break it. And did you find them? Mara pulled out the vial, holding it up so he could see the dark liquid inside. The Ember Witch gave me this. She said it would amplify my power, make it strong enough to burn the curse out of your blood. Ronan stared at the vial, then at her. At what cost? Does it matter? Yes. His voice was sharp. Mara, what's the price? She looked away. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She met his eyes. The witch said breaking the curse requires the same things it was made from. Pain, rage, love. I have to burn, Ronan. Really burn. And when I do, when I pour all of it into you, the curse breaks. And you? I might survive. I might not. Then you're not doing it. That's not your choice to make. Like hell it isn't. Ronan pushed off the door, crossing to her. You think I'm going to let you kill yourself to save me? You don't have a say in this. The hell I don't. Look at yourself. Mara's voice rose. You can barely stand. Your skin is cold. I can see frost forming on your breath even in this warm room. The curse is already killing you. Ronan flinched, but didn't deny it. How long? Mara asked quietly. How long have you been feeling it? A month, maybe longer. His jaw tightened. It started the day I saw them, Kyle and Lena, the moment I realized they were mine. Because you love them. Yes. The word was torn from him. I love them, and it's killing me, just like it killed my father, and his father, and every damned king before them. Mara's chest ached. Then let me save you. At the cost of your life? No. They need their father, Ronan. They need their mother more. He grabbed her shoulders, his hands ice cold even through her sleeves. Listen to me. If you die trying to save me, they lose both of us. I won't let that happen. And if I don't try? What then? Mara's voice cracked. I watch you freeze to death. Watch my children lose their father anyway. At least this way there's a chance. A chance that might kill you. I know. They stared at each other, the air between them crackling with unspoken things. I can't lose you, Ronan said finally. Not again. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Mara's breath caught. Ronan! 5 years ago, I pushed you away because I was terrified of this, of loving you and watching the curse take me. I thought I was protecting both of us. His voice was raw. But it didn't work. Because I never stopped. I never stopped thinking about you, never stopped wondering where you were, if you were safe. And when you walked back into my life with our children, he closed his eyes. It was already too late. The curse started that night, the moment I admitted to myself what I'd been denying for 5 years. He opened his eyes, and they were bleak. I love you, Mara. I've loved you since the first time you told me to stop being an ass and actually listen to people. And now it's killing me. Mara's hands came up to cover his. They were so cold, like touching winter itself. Then let me save you, she whispered. Please, let me do this. I can't ask that of you. You're not asking, I'm offering. Ronan's forehead dropped to hers. For a moment they just stood there, breathing the same air. Then he pulled back. If we do this, if we try, we do it right. No rushing, no last-minute desperation. We figure out how to maximize your chances of surviving. The witch said there are no guarantees. Then we make our own. His voice was steel. Davern knows more about ancient magic than anyone. We bring him in. We research every possible angle. And we don't try anything until we've exhausted every option. Ronan, you don't have time. I have enough. The curse takes weeks, sometimes months. We use that time. Mara wanted to argue, but the determination in his eyes stopped her. All right, she said finally. We do it your way. But if it gets worse, if you start deteriorating faster, then we try. I promise. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Ronan's thumb brushed her cheek, and she realized she was crying. We'll figure this out, he said quietly. Together. It was the first time in 5 years that the word didn't sound impossible. The next morning, Selra made her move. Mara was heading to breakfast with the twins when guards surrounded them in the corridor. Not Ronan's personal guards. These wore different colors. House Vaughn colors. "Lady Cade," the captain said stiffly, "you're to come with us." "On whose authority?" "The High Council. You're being charged with conspiracy and treason." Cale grabbed Mara's hand. "Mama?" "It's all right," she said, even though it wasn't. "Where are you taking me?" "The council chamber. Your children will be escorted to secure rooms." "No." Mara's voice hardened. "They stay with me." "That's not—" "I said they stay with me." Fire sparked in her palms, just enough to make the point. The captain's hand moved to his sword. Behind Mara, Kael's breath misted cold in the warm air. They stood frozen, tension crackling. Then Davern appeared at the end of the corridor, slightly out of breath. "Captain Morse, stand down." "These are council orders, and I have orders directly from the king. The children stay with their mother, unless you want to explain to His Majesty why you ignored a direct command." Captain Morse's jaw worked. Then he stepped back. "Fine, but they all come to the council chamber. Now." They were marched through the palace like prisoners. Nobles watched from doorways, whispering. Servants pressed themselves against walls. Mara kept her head high, one hand holding Lena, the other on Kael's shoulder. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her afraid. The council chamber was full. Every seat taken, nobles packed around the edges. Selra sat at the head of the table, looking composed and deadly. Ronan wasn't there. "Where's the king?" Mara demanded. "Indisposed." Selra's smile was cold. "But as High Advisor, I'm authorized to conduct proceedings in his absence." "This is illegal. This is necessary." Selra gestured to a chair. "Sit." Mara didn't move. "What do you want, Selra?" "The truth." Selra stood, producing a stack of documents. "About who you really are, about what you're planning, about why you brought 2 cursed children into this palace." "They're not cursed, aren't they?" Selra's voice rose, pitched for the audience. "Children of Solane blood, carriers of the same power that destroyed House Varric. You expect us to believe that's coincidence?" "I expect you to use your brain instead of fear." Gasps rippled through the room. Selra's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Careful, Lady Cade. You're already on thin ice." "Am I? Or are you just desperate to maintain control?" Mara stepped forward. "You've been preparing for Ronan's death for years. Building alliances, positioning yourself. But then we showed up, real heirs with real claims, and suddenly your careful plans don't work anymore. That's absurd." "Is it?" Mara looked around the room. "Ask yourselves, who benefits from getting rid of us? Who's been pushing this narrative about us being dangerous? Who stands to gain the most if Ronan dies without legitimate heirs?" The nobles shifted uncomfortably. "You're deflecting," Selra said sharply. "This isn't about me. It's about you, about the threat you pose." "The only thing I threaten is your ambition." Selra's mask cracked, just for a second, just enough for Mara to see the fury underneath. "Prove it," Selra snapped. "Prove you're not a threat. Show us these powers you and your children have. Demonstrate that you can control them." "No." "No?" Selra's eyebrow arched. "Why not? If you have nothing to hide—" "Because my children are not performing animals for your entertainment." Mara's voice was ice. "And because whatever I show you, you'll twist it, use it as evidence against us." "Then you leave me no choice." Selra looked at the guards. "Take the children into custody. If the mother won't cooperate, perhaps they will. Touch them, and you die." The words came out flat, absolute. The temperature in the room dropped. Fire pooled in Mara's hands, not sparks this time, but real flames. Blue flames that danced along her fingers without burning her skin. Kael's hands frosted over. Lena's eyes glowed gold. The guard stepped back. "This," Selra said triumphantly, "is exactly what I'm talking about. Uncontrolled power. Dangerous. The only danger here is you." Everyone turned. Ronan stood in the doorway, and he looked like death. His skin was blue-white, his lips tinged with frost, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "Your Majesty." Selra's voice was smooth. "You shouldn't be—" "I shouldn't be watching my advisor stage a coup?" Ronan moved into the room, each step deliberate. Because that's what this is, an attempt to remove legitimate heirs so you can position yourself. That's not true. Isn't it? Ronan pulled out a folder, slapping it on the table. I had Davrin do some research. Interesting what you find when you dig, like how your family has been positioning itself for generations. How your great-grandfather was passed over for the throne. How your father spent his life building alliances, waiting for his chance. Selra's face went pale. You've been planning this since you were 16, Ronan continued, building your network, preparing for the moment when I died and the throne was vulnerable. You probably even hoped I'd die young, without heirs, so you could step in as regent, control whoever came next. You're delusional. Am I? Then explain the letters. Ronan pulled out papers. Letters to House Carrick, House Brennan, House Tor, all promising them positions of power in exchange for support when the throne changes hands. The room erupted in whispers. Selra's composure cracked completely. Those are forgeries. They're not. I had them verified. Ronan looked at the assembled nobles. Lady Vaughn has been conspiring against the crown for years, and the moment she saw a threat to her plans, she tried to eliminate it, by turning you all against Mara and my children. She's Solane blood! Selra's voice rose desperately. The bloodline that cursed you. How can you defend her? Because she's trying to save me, the words echoed through the chamber. While you've been plotting my death, she's been searching for a way to break the curse. She risked her life going to the Ashwood. She's risking it again by being here. Mara's throat closed. Ronan turned to her, his expression soft despite the frost creeping up his neck. I know what you're planning. I know what the Ember Witch told you, and I know you're willing to burn yourself alive to save me. Ronan, that's not a threat. He looked back at the nobles. That's love. That's what Mara is. Not a conspirator, not a danger. A woman trying to save the father of her children. Silence. Then Lord Carrick stood slowly. If Lady Cade is truly trying to break the curse, perhaps we've been hasty. Hasty? Selra's voice was shrill. She's manipulating all of you. Enough! Ronan's voice cracked like a whip. Lady Vaughn, you are hereby removed from your position as High Advisor. You will be confined to your estates pending a full investigation into your activities. You can't. I can. I'm the king. Ronan gestured to the guards. Take her. They moved forward. Selra backed away, her face twisted with fury. This isn't over, she hissed. The curse will kill you anyway. And when it does, when you're dead and frozen, everything will fall apart. You'll see. You'll all see. They dragged her out, her voice echoing down the corridor. The nobles sat in stunned silence. Ronan swayed slightly. Mara rushed to his side, catching him before he fell. Everyone out, she said. Now. They filed out quickly, leaving just Mara, Ronan, the twins, and Davrin. You idiot, Mara said, lowering Ronan into a chair. You shouldn't have done that. Not when you're this weak. Had to. His voice was thin. She was going to hurt you. And now you've made yourself worse. She pressed her hand to his chest. The cold went bone deep. Davrin appeared with a blanket, draping it over Ronan. We need to move fast. If Selra's been removed, her allies will strike back. We have maybe a day before this palace turns into a war zone. Then we do it tonight, Mara said. Ronan's eyes snapped to hers. No. We agreed we'd wait until we exhausted every option. We just ran out of options. She pulled out the vial. It's this or watch you die, and I'm not watching you die. Mama? Lena's small voice. What are you going to do? Mara knelt beside her children. Something dangerous, something that might hurt, but it's the only way to save him. Will you be okay? Kyle asked. I don't know. His jaw set, so much like his father. Then we'll help. No, we can help. Lena stepped forward. I have fire too, and Kale has ice. Maybe if we work together. Mara looked at Davrin. Is that possible? I don't know. The texts never mentioned anything like this. He pulled out his notes, flipping through frantically. But theoretically, if the curse is ice and the cure is fire, and your children have both, they might be able to act as anchors, balance the forces. That's insane, Ronan said. So is everything else about this situation? Davern shot back. But it might work. It might give Mara a better chance of surviving. Mara looked at her children, at their scared, determined faces. Are you sure? She asked. They nodded. All right. Mara stood. Then we try. Tonight. Before Selra's allies make their move. Where? Ronan asked. The throne room, Davern said. It's warded. Protected. If the magic goes wrong, at least it'll be contained. Ronan tried to stand, but his legs gave out. Mara caught him, and for a moment they were face to face. This is really happening, he said quietly. Yes. I'm terrified. So am I. His hand came up, cupping her face. The touch was ice, but she didn't pull away. If this doesn't work, he started. It will work. But if it doesn't, if I die anyway, promise me you'll take the children and run. Get as far from here as you can. Live. Ronan, promise me. Mara's eyes burned. I promise. He nodded, then leaned forward and kissed her. It was brief, gentle, and it tasted like winter. When he pulled back, frost clung to her lips. For luck, he said. Yeah. Night fell like a curtain. They gathered in the throne room, Mara, Ronan, the twins, and Davern. The doors were barred, guards posted outside with orders to let no one enter. Candles ringed the space, casting dancing shadows. In the center, Ronan sat on the throne, his skin so pale he looked like a corpse. Mara could see the ice now, crystallizing beneath his skin, spreading like roots through his veins. We need to hurry, Davern said. He's deteriorating fast. Mara nodded. She uncorked the vial and drank the Selene blood in one gulp. It burned going down. Burned like swallowing the sun. Power exploded through her veins. Fire erupted from her skin. Not flames, but pure heat, pure light. It poured off her in waves, turning the air shimmering and hot. Mama! Lena's voice sounded far away. I'm all right, Mara gasped. Get ready! Kael took her left hand, Lena her right. The moment they touched, the fire stabilized, became manageable. Now what? Kael asked. Now, Mara said. We burn. She walked to Ronan, her children flanking her. He looked up at her, and despite everything, he smiled. You're glowing, he said. So are you, like winter starlight. Poetic. Shut up. She placed her hand on his chest, directly over his heart. The children did the same, and then she let the fire go. It poured out of her, not all at once, but in a controlled stream. She felt it traveling through her palm, into Ronan's body, seeking the ice at his core. Ronan gasped, his back arching. Don't fight it, Mara said through gritted teeth. Let it burn. The ice fought back. She could feel it resisting, trying to freeze her fire before it could take root. But she pushed harder, Lena's heat and Kael's cold balancing her, keeping her anchored. The curse was deep, deeper than she'd expected. It had wrapped around Ronan's heart like a cage. She pushed deeper. Ronan screamed. Mama, stop, Lena cried. You're hurting him. I have to. Sweat poured down Mara's face. It's the only way. She found the curse's source, a knot of ice and rage and ancient pain, Alara's pain, locked in Ronan's bloodline for 300 years. Fire cannot kill fire, the Ember Witch had said. Mara understood now. She couldn't just burn the curse out. She had to transform it, take that rage and pain and turn it into something else. She thought of Ronan's smile, the way he'd looked at their children, the kiss that had tasted like winter and hope. She thought of love, and poured every bit of it into the fire. The curse screamed, a sound only she could hear, ancient and agonized. Then it shattered. Light exploded from Ronan's chest, so bright everyone had to look away. Heat and cold clashed, creating wind that tore through the room. And then silence. Mara collapsed. Strong arms caught her, not cold anymore, warm, human. She looked up into Ronan's face. His skin had color. His lips were pink. And his eyes were clear. Did it work? She whispered. Yes. His voice cracked. It worked. Around them, Kael and Lena whooped with joy. Davern was laughing, papers scattered around him. The curse is broken, Davern said, checking his instruments. It's gone, completely. Mara tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't work. I feel strange. You burned through an enormous amount of power, Davern said. You'll need rest. Days of it. I'm alive, though. You're alive. Ronan pulled her close, and this time his embrace was warm. You did it. You actually did it. We did it. Mara looked at her children. All of us. They piled on, a tangle of arms and laughter and tears. For the first time in 300 years, the Varric curse was broken. For the first time in 5 years, they were a family. The news spread through the palace like wildfire. By morning, everyone knew. The king was cured. The curse was broken. And Mara, village nobody, frontier survivor, Solane descendant, had done the impossible. The nobles who'd whispered about her now bowed. The servants who'd sneered now smiled. Even Lord Carrick approached her in the hallway to offer grudging respect. You've changed everything, he said. Mara just nodded, too tired to argue. She found Davern in the library already surrounded by new books. What are you doing? She asked. Research. He looked up, grinning. If you could break one curse, maybe there are others. Other impossible things we could fix. One miracle at a time, Davern. Fair. He sobered. How are you really? Exhausted, terrified, relieved. She sank into a chair. Selra's still out there. Her allies are still plotting. This isn't over. No, but you won the first battle. That counts for something. Does it? Yes. Davern leaned forward. You proved everyone wrong. The court, the nobles, even Ronan. You took an impossible situation and bent it to your will. That's power, Mara. Real power. She thought about that, about how far she'd come from that burning village, about the children sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks, about Ronan, warm and alive and whole. Maybe, she said. That evening, there was a formal dinner. Not a feast. Ronan didn't have the energy for spectacle, but a meal with the remaining council members who hadn't been implicated in Selra's schemes. Mara wore blue, Ronan's colors. The twins flanked her, their golden eyes bright and unashamed. When they entered the dining hall, everyone stood. Ronan was already there, looking better than he had in weeks. He smiled when he saw her. Lady Cade, he said formally. Please, sit. She took the seat to his right, the place of honor. Throughout the meal, people talked, made plans, discussed how to move forward now that the curse was broken and Selra was gone. But Mara barely heard them. She was focused on Ronan's hand resting on the table next to hers. Warm, steady, alive. He caught her looking and smiled. Then, slowly, he reached over and took her hand. Their fingers intertwined. And for the first time since she'd fled 5 years ago, Mara let herself believe. Maybe they could do this. Maybe they could actually build something. A kingdom, a family, a future. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more battles, more enemies, more impossible odds. But they'd face them together. And that, Mara thought, made all the difference. And that, Mara thought, made all the difference. But peace, she learned over the next 3 days, was a fragile thing. Lyra Vance was confined to her estates, but her network ran deep. Whispers spread through the palace like infection. The curse might be broken, but at what cost? What other powers did the Solane woman possess? What would she demand in return? On the 4th morning after the breaking, Mara woke to find a crowd gathered in the courtyard below her window. Angry voices rose, though she couldn't make out the words. She dressed quickly and went to find Ronan. He was in a strategy meeting with what remained of his council, Lord Carrick, Lady Bremen, and 2 other nobles who'd proven themselves clean of Selra's influence. They all looked up when she entered. What's happening? Mara asked. Protests, Lord Carrick said grimly. Started an hour ago. 50 people, maybe more now, demanding answers about you and the children. What kind of answers? The kind that end with you gone. Lady Bremen's voice was sharp but not unkind. Selra's supporters are calling you a witch, saying you've enchanted the king, that you'll corrupt the entire bloodline with Solane magic. Mara's jaw tightened. So we're back to this. We never left, Ronan said quietly. He looked tired, but his color was good, alive. Breaking the curse bought us time, but it didn't change centuries of fear. Then what do? We face them, Ronan stood. Together. Your Majesty, that's unwise, Lord Carrick started. Everything about this situation is unwise, but hiding won't make it better. Ronan looked at Mara. Will you stand with me? She thought of the mob in the village, the torches, the terror in her children's eyes. Yes, she said, but not just me. The twins, too. Absolutely not, Lady Bremen said. They're children. They're the future. Mara's voice was steel. And people need to see that they're not monsters. They're just children who happen to have power they can't fully control yet. That's exactly what people are afraid of, Lord Carrick muttered. Then we show them there's nothing to fear. Mara looked at Ronan. Trust me. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, we do this together. All four of us. The courtyard was packed by the time they emerged. Mara counted at least 200 people, maybe more. Nobles mixed with commoners, united in their fear and anger. At the front stood a man Mara recognized, one of Selra's closest allies, Lord Thane. He had the kind of face that looked perpetually disapproving. Your Majesty, he called out as Ronan descended the steps. We demand an audience. You have it. Ronan stopped halfway down, Mara at his side. Kale and Lena stood behind them, trying to look brave. We want answers, Lord Thane continued, about this woman, about her powers, about what she's done to you. She saved my life, Ronan said simply, or cursed you in a different way. Lord Thane's voice rose. How do we know the Selene magic isn't corrupting you even now? How do we know she hasn't twisted your mind? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. You want proof I'm not corrupted? Ronan's voice cut through the noise. Fine. Ask me anything. Test me. I'll prove my mind is my own. It's not your mind we question, Your Majesty. It's your judgment. Lord Thane pointed at Mara. You've elevated a nobody, given her children royal status, all because she claims they're yours. They are mine, so you say. But where's the proof? Where's the evidence beyond golden eyes and your word? Ronan's hands clenched. Before he could respond, Kael stepped forward. I'll prove it, the boy said, his young voice clear and steady. Kael, no. Mara started, but he was already walking down the steps. At 5 years old, he looked impossibly small against the crowd, but his spine was straight, his eyes blazing gold. You want proof we're his children? Kael stopped a few feet from Lord Thane. Watch. He held out his hand. Frost formed in his palm, not wild, not uncontrolled, but deliberate. It crystallized into the shape of a wolf, perfect and detailed, before melting away. That's Varic ice, Kael said. The king's power. I have it because he's my father. Then Lena stepped forward, joining her brother. And I have fire. She held out her hand and blue flames danced across her fingers. They formed a bird, wings spread, before dissipating into smoke. Selene fire, she said, from our mother. We're both. We're proof that the bloodlines can unite instead of destroy. The crowd went silent. Lord Thane's face was red. This proves nothing except that they're dangerous. Dangerous? Mara's voice cracked like a whip. She walked down to stand with her children. My daughter is 5 years old, my son the same. They're learning to control powers they didn't ask for, and you want to call them dangerous because you're afraid of what you don't understand. We have every right to be afraid. No, you have every right to be ignorant, but that's your choice. Mara looked at the crowd. I know what you're thinking. I know what you've heard. That I'm a witch, that I've corrupted the king, that my children will bring ruin. She let fire bloom in her hands, controlled, beautiful, unthreatening. This is Selene fire. Yes, the same power that cursed the Varics 300 years ago. But it's also the power that broke that curse, that saved your king's life. She let the fire fade. Magic isn't good or evil. It's just power. What matters is how you use it. Pretty words, Lord Thane sneered. But words don't change what you are. What am I? Mara stepped closer to him. I'm a woman who survived a mob trying to burn her children alive, who spent 5 years hiding, running, protecting them from people exactly like you, who came back here not because I wanted power, but because I had no choice. Her voice rose, carrying across the courtyard. You want to know what I want? I want my children to be safe. I want them to grow up without fear. I want them to have a father who can actually be in their lives without dying for it. That's all. That's everything. And in exchange, Lord Thane's voice was harsh. What do you demand from us? Nothing. I don't want your crowns or your titles or your approval. Mara's eyes swept the crowd. I just want you to leave us alone. Let us live. Let us prove that fire and ice can coexist. Silence stretched. Then a voice from the back of the crowd. What if you're lying? What if this is all a trick? Mara turned toward the voice. Then time will tell. Watch us. Judge us by our actions, not your fears. If we prove dangerous, if we abuse our power, then you have every right to act. But give us that chance. And if we don't? Lord Thane challenged. Ronan stepped forward, his voice cold. Then you'll have to go through me first. Mara and these children are under my protection. Anyone who harms them answers to me personally. Your Majesty, I'm not finished. Ronan's gaze swept the crowd. For 300 years, my family has suffered under a curse. We've died young, been forced to live without love, without connection, without the most basic human experiences. And we accepted it because we thought there was no other choice. He took Mara's hand, pulling her close. But she found another way. She risked everything to save me. And now, for the first time in centuries, a Varick king can actually live, can love, can be human. His voice softened. These children, Kael and Lena, they're proof that old wounds can heal, that ancient enemies can become family. They're not a threat. They're hope. The crowd shifted. Mara could feel the mood changing, uncertainty replacing anger. Then Lady Bremen stepped forward from where she'd been watching. I believe them. Heads turned. Lady Bremen? Lord Thane looked betrayed. I've watched them for weeks, she said. I've seen how Lady Cade cares for those children, how the king looks at them, how they've changed him. She looked at Ronan. You're different, Your Majesty, warmer, more present. That's not corruption. That's what it looks like when someone finally gets to be alive. She's right, another voice called. Then another. The crowd was fracturing. Some still looked suspicious, but others were nodding, murmuring agreement. Lord Thane's face purpled. This is madness. No, Ronan said quietly. This is the future, and you can either be part of it or you can leave. Are you banishing me? I'm giving you a choice. Accept that things have changed, that the old ways are dying, or remove yourself from my court. I won't force you to stay where you're not happy. Lord Thane looked around, clearly hoping for support. But the crowd was dispersing, people talking among themselves, the anger draining away. He turned back to Ronan, his expression ugly. This isn't over. Yes, Ronan said. It is. Lord Thane stalked away, 2 or 3 supporters trailing behind him. The rest of the crowd lingered, some approaching to offer cautious congratulations, others just watching with curious eyes. Mara felt Kael and Lena press against her sides. She put her arms around them, holding them close. Did we do okay, Mama? Lena whispered. You did perfect. But Lord Thane's words proved prophetic. It wasn't over. 2 nights later, fire broke out in the East Wing. Not magical fire, just regular flames from overturned lanterns and spilled oil. But it spread fast, consuming rooms and corridors. Mara woke to screaming. She grabbed the twins and ran, following the flow of people toward safety. Smoke filled the hallways, thick and choking. They made it to the courtyard, coughing and gasping. Around them, servants and nobles alike huddled in nightclothes, watching the palace burn. Where's Ronan? Mara demanded. Still inside, a guard said grimly. He went back for stragglers. What? Why? Because that's what he does. Mara's blood went cold. She looked at the burning palace, at the flames licking out of windows. Davrin, she said to the young scribe who'd appeared at her side. Take the children. Keep them safe. Oh, what are you? But she was already running back toward the entrance. Mama, no! Kael's voice tore at her heart, but she didn't stop. The heat hit her like a wall. Smoke burned her lungs, made her eyes water. But she pushed forward, calling Ronan's name. She found him on the 3rd floor, helping an elderly servant down the stairs. His face was black with soot, his shirt torn. What are you doing here? He shouted over the roar of flames. Saving your stubborn ass! She grabbed the servant's other arm. Come on. They made it down 2 flights before the ceiling groaned above them. Mara looked up and saw beams starting to crack. "Run!" Ronan shoved them forward. The ceiling collapsed. Mara threw up her hands instinctively, and fire exploded from her palms, not to burn, but to shield. It formed a dome over them, catching the falling debris, holding it back just long enough for them to scramble clear. They burst out into the courtyard, coughing and gasping. The elderly servant was quickly taken away by healers. Mara collapsed to her knees, exhaustion crashing over her. Ronan knelt beside her. "That was insane," says the man who ran into a burning building. "Fair point." He pulled her close, and she leaned into him, too tired to hold herself up. Around them, the palace continued to burn, but the people were safe. Everyone had made it out. "This was deliberate," Ronan said quietly. "Someone set this fire." "Lord Thane." "Probably. Or one of Selra's remaining supporters." His jaw tightened. "They're not going to stop. Not until we're gone. Or they are." "Then we make them stop." Mara pulled back to look at him. "We end this. Tonight." "How?" "By giving them what they actually want. Proof that we're not a threat. Proof so undeniable they can't twist it." "What kind of proof?" Mara smiled, fierce and wild. "A wedding!" Ronan blinked. "What?" "Marry me, publicly, in front of the entire court. Show them we're united. That fire and ice can coexist. That you're choosing this, choosing us, of your own free will." "Mara, that's the only way. As long as we're separate, as long as there's doubt about our relationship, they'll keep attacking. But if we're bound together, if I'm officially your queen," she met his eyes, "then threatening me is threatening the crown itself. Even the most ambitious nobles won't risk that." Ronan stared at her. Then slowly, he started to laugh. "What?" Mara demanded. "I was trying to figure out how to propose for the last 3 days. You just beat me to it." Her breath caught. "You were going to propose?" "Of course I was. Did you think I'd break a 300-year curse and not want to keep you?" He cupped her face, thumb brushing away soot. "Maracade, will you marry me? Will you be my queen, my partner, the mother of my heirs, and the person who keeps me from being a complete idiot?" Tears pricked her eyes. "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard." "It's the only one you're getting." "Then yes, you complete idiot. I'll marry you." He kissed her, there in the courtyard with the palace burning behind them and half the court watching. And for the first time since this all began, Mara felt something like certainty settle in her chest. They could do this. They would do this. Together. The wedding was arranged for 3 days later. Fast by royal standards, but they couldn't afford to wait. Every day gave their enemies more time to plot. Mara spent those days in a whirlwind of preparation. Dresses, ceremonies, guest lists. Lady Bremen took charge, treating the whole thing like a military campaign. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right," she declared. "No one will be able to question the legitimacy." On the morning of the wedding, Mara stood in her chambers while servants fussed over her gown, deep blue with gold embroidery, colors of both Varric and Solane. Kale and Lena sat on her bed, watching with wide eyes. "You look like a princess," Lena breathed. "I feel like I'm wearing a tent." "A pretty tent," Kale offered. Mara smiled. "Thank you, sweetheart." There was a knock at the door. Davern entered, looking uncomfortable in formal clothes. "It's time," he said. Mara's stomach flipped. "Already?" "You could wait. Make a dramatic entrance. Or I could get this over with before I talk myself out of it." Davern grinned. "That's the spirit." They walked to the great hall, Kyle and Lena holding Mara's hands. The doors stood open, and beyond them she could see the assembled court, hundreds of people, all dressed in their finest, all watching. "Ready?" Davern asked. "No, let's go anyway." They stepped inside. The hall fell silent. Every eye turned to her. Mara forced herself to walk steadily, head high, children at her sides. At the far end, Ronan waited. He wore black and silver, and the sight of him made her breath catch. He looked strong, alive, real. She reached him and took his offered hand. The high priest began the ceremony, his voice echoing off stone walls. Mara barely heard the words. She was focused on Ronan's face, on the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. Do you, Ronan Varric, take this woman to be your wife and queen? I do. Do you, Mara Cade, take this man to be your husband and king? Mara thought of the journey that had brought her here. The fear, the running, the fire and ice, and desperate hope. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. May your union bring prosperity to the kingdom. Ronan pulled her close and kissed her, and the hall erupted in applause. Not everyone applauded. Mara could see pockets of resistance, people with tight faces and crossed arms, but they were outnumbered now. The tide had turned. When they pulled apart, Ronan took her hand and raised it high. I present to you, he called out, voice carrying through the hall, Queen Mara Varric, my wife, my partner, the woman who saved my life and changed this kingdom's future. More applause, louder this time. Then Ronan did something unexpected. He gestured to Kael and Lena. And these are my heirs, Prince Kael and Princess Lena Varric. Not bastards, not threats. My legitimate children, born of my blood and recognized by this crown. He pulled a circlet from his pocket, 2 small crowns, delicate and perfect. He placed one on each twin's head. From this day forward, they are heirs to the throne, protected by law, recognized by all. The applause was thunderous now. Even the resistant nobles couldn't argue with the formal declaration. Mara looked at her children's stunned faces and felt tears spill over. They'd done it. Against all odds, against every expectation, they'd actually done it. The feast afterward was massive, food and wine and music filling the great hall. Nobles approached to offer congratulations, some genuine, some calculated. Mara smiled and accepted them all. Halfway through, Lord Carrick approached. He bowed stiffly. Your Majesty, I owe you an apology. Mara raised an eyebrow. Do you? I judged you unfairly, made assumptions based on fear rather than evidence. He straightened. You've proven yourself. More than that, you've proven me wrong. That takes strength. It takes desperation, Mara corrected. But thank you. He nodded and moved away. Lady Bremen appeared next, smiling. Well done. I wasn't sure you'd pull it off. Honestly, neither was I. The mark of a good queen, succeeding despite your doubts. Lady Bremen's voice dropped. There will still be challenges. Selra is contained but not defeated. Lord Thane has fled to the borderlands, and the common people are still uncertain. I know, but you have something the others don't. You have the king's love, and that, in this kingdom, is a power all its own. Late that night, after the feast had finally ended and the guests had departed, Mara stood on the balcony of the royal chambers. The city sprawled below, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Ronan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. How does it feel? He asked. Being queen? Terrifying, exhausting, surreal. She leaned back against him. Ask me again in a year. Fair enough. He was quiet for a moment. Thank you. For what? For not giving up. For fighting when I'd already accepted defeat. For being stubborn enough to save me despite my best efforts to push you away. Mara turned in his arms. You're welcome. But you should know, I didn't do it for you. No? I did it for them. She nodded toward the adjoining room where Kael and Lena slept. They deserved a father. I just made sure they got one. Ronan's smile was soft. Liar. You did it because you loved me. Maybe a little? A little? Fine. A lot. But don't let it go to your head. He kissed her, slow and deep. When they pulled apart, his eyes were serious. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret this, he said. Bold claim. I'm a king. I'm allowed to be bold. You're an idiot. You're idiot. Mara laughed, the sound free and genuine. Yes, mine. 3 months later, Mara stood in the council chamber, addressing the assembled lords and ladies. She'd called this meeting herself, a test of her new authority. The old laws regarding magic are being rewritten, she announced. No longer will people with gifts be hunted or feared. Instead, they'll be registered, trained, taught to control their abilities safely. Your Majesty, that's dangerous, someone protested. No, what's dangerous is pretending magic doesn't exist. What's dangerous is letting fear dictate policy. Mara's voice was firm. My children have power. So do others scattered across this kingdom. We can either help them learn control, or we can drive them into hiding where they'll become the very threat you fear. Silence. Then Lord Carrick nodded slowly. There's wisdom in that. Others murmured agreement. Furthermore, Mara continued, we're establishing scholarship programs for children from the frontier, from villages, from places where education is scarce. Talent doesn't only exist among nobles. It will cost less than rebellion, less than war, less than watching this kingdom stagnate because we refuse to adapt. She looked around the table. Change is coming whether we want it or not. We can guide it, or we can be swept away by it. The vote passed. Not unanimously, but by enough. After the meeting, Ronan found her in the library. You're getting good at this, he said. At what? Being queen, leading, making impossible things happen. Mara shrugged. I'm just doing what makes sense. That's what makes you good at it. He pulled her close. Most people in power do what benefits them. You do what benefits everyone. Careful. You'll make me think I'm actually qualified for this job. You're more qualified than anyone I know. That's it. A year after the wedding, Mara stood in the nursery with Kael and Lena. They were 6 now, growing tall and confident. Their lessons in controlling their powers had progressed well. Watch this, Mama, Kael said. He held out his hand and frost spiraled up from his palm, forming an intricate flower that sparkled in the sunlight. Beautiful, Mara said. Lena jumped up and down. My turn. Fire bloomed in her hands, shaping itself into a butterfly that fluttered through the air before dissipating. Also beautiful. You're both getting so strong. Strong enough to help? Kael asked. Help with what? With the kingdom. We want to help, Mama, like you do. Mara's heart squeezed. You're 6 years old. You have plenty of time. But we can do things now, Lena insisted. We can show people that fire and ice aren't scary, that we're just us. Mara looked at their eager faces and saw the future. Not the frightened children fleeing a mob, but confident young royals ready to take their place in the world. All right, she said, let's talk to your father about it. They found Ronan in his study, buried in paperwork. He looked up when they entered, his expression softening. And what brings my entire family to interrupt my very important work? He asked with mock seriousness. We have a proposal, Kael announced. Over the next hour, they planned it out. A public demonstration of magic, carefully controlled and safe, showing the people that power could be beautiful instead of threatening. 2 weeks later, they held it in the palace square. Thousands came to watch. Kael and Lena stood side by side, Mara and Ronan behind them. And together, the twins created something magnificent, ice and fire woven together, forming shapes and patterns that danced in the air. A phoenix made of flame, a wolf made of frost, both circling each other in an eternal dance. The crowd gasped, then applauded. And Mara, watching her children command the attention of thousands without fear, felt something shift inside her. This was it. This was what she'd been fighting for. Not just survival, not just safety, but a world where her children could be themselves, openly, proudly, without fear. That night, after the children were asleep, Mara and Ronan sat on their balcony, sharing wine and watching the stars. Do you ever regret it? Ronan asked quietly. Coming back here? Staying. Mara thought about it, about the fear and the struggle, about the night she'd lain awake wondering if she'd made the wrong choice. No, she said finally. It was hard. It's still hard. But it was right. Even though you never wanted to be queen? Especially because I never wanted to be queen, she looked at him. I think that's what makes me good at it. I'm not doing this for power or glory. I'm doing it because someone has to, and because, she paused, because I actually give a damn. Ronan laughed. That's the most honest description of leadership I've ever heard. It's the truth. She leaned into him. We're building something here, something new, something that might actually last. A kingdom where fire and ice can coexist. A kingdom where anyone can belong. Mara's voice softened. Where a hunted woman can become a queen. where cursed children can become heirs, where old wounds finally heal. Ronan kissed her temple. I love you. I know. That's it? Just, I know? What do you want? Poetry? Maybe a little. Mara turned to face him fully. Fine. Ronan Varric, you're the most stubborn, frustrating, impossible man I've ever met. You push me away and pull me close in equal measure. You make me want to scream and laugh in the same breath. And I love you. Completely. Even when I want to hit you. That's the most violent declaration of love I've ever heard. It's the only one you're getting. He kissed her, and she kissed him back, and the stars wheeled overhead like they'd been doing for millennia, uncaring of human drama. But down below, in the palace and the city beyond, things were changing, slowly, imperfectly, but changing nonetheless. 5 years later, Mara stood in the throne room for a very different ceremony. Kael and Lena were 11 now, old enough to officially take their place in the line of succession. The hall was packed, every noble house represented. But there were others too, common folk, frontier villagers, people with magic who'd come to the capital seeking the training Mara had promised. The kingdom had changed, was still changing. Ronan placed ceremonial swords in the twins' hands. Do you swear to protect this kingdom? He asked formally. We do, they answered in unison. Do you swear to use your power wisely and justly? We do. Then rise, Prince Kael and Princess Lena, acknowledged heirs to the throne. The crowd erupted in applause. Mara watched from her place beside the throne, pride swelling in her chest. Her children stood tall and proud, no longer hiding their golden eyes or their abilities. After the ceremony, as the celebration began, Davern appeared at Mara's side. You did it, he said quietly. Did what? Changed everything. 5 years ago you were running for your life. Now you're queen, the curse is broken, and magic users are welcomed instead of hunted. I didn't do it alone. No, but you started it. Davern smiled. That counts for something. Mara looked across the room at Ronan, who was talking with Kael about sword play, at Lena, who was showing a group of younger children how to make fire dance. It counts for everything, she said softly. 10 years after the breaking of the curse, Maracade stood on the palace walls at dawn. The kingdom stretched below her, peaceful and thriving. Ronan came up beside her, his hair now shot through with silver, but his eyes still bright. Couldn't sleep? He asked. Too much on my mind. Anything specific? Mara was quiet for a moment. I was thinking about that night, in the village, when the mob came for us, when I thought we were going to die. That was a long time ago. 16 years. She shook her head. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Other times it feels like a different life entirely. It was a different life. We're different people now. Are we? Mara looked at him. You're still stubborn. And you're still impossible. They smiled at each other, the kind of smile that comes from years of knowing someone completely. Below them, the city was waking up. Smoke rose from chimneys. People emerged to begin their days. And somewhere in the palace, Kael and Lena were probably still sleeping, two 16-year-olds who'd grown into their power and their roles as heirs. Do you think it will last? Ronan asked. Everything we've built? I don't know. Nothing lasts forever. That's cheerful. But we gave it a chance. Mara took his hand. We proved it's possible. Fire and ice, old enemies becoming family, people with power learning to live alongside those without. That's more than anyone else managed. True. Ronan squeezed her hand, and our children will carry it forward. And theirs after them. They stood in comfortable silence as the sun rose, painting the sky gold and pink. A hunted woman and a cursed king who'd defied every expectation, who'd survived when they shouldn't have, who'd built something new from the ashes of the old, and who'd proven, beyond any doubt, that in even the harshest world, where mobs burned the innocent and curses killed kings, love, courage, and defiance could burn brighter than any darkness. Not perfectly, not easily, but truly. And in the end, that was all that mattered.